And they were tall, they were like 7 feet tall. I looked at them and they started telepathically communicating to me, reminding me who I was. I understood deeply, completely, that this life is not all there is.
Kia ora. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, host of your show. We talk all things life, death, experiences in between, death, dying, life living, the works. And I'm excited today to be talking to Linda Deir, who is here. We are going to stay side by side for this interview, so you'll be able to get both views if you're watching the video version. Linda's got a very interesting, what she calls her talking board. She's had a very in-depth near-death experience, and I'm excited to get into our conversation, see what happens today. So, Linda, welcome along. It's great to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Christy.
Now, I know you've got quite a story behind you, even just in the few minutes that we've been chatting. There's been lots of exciting things coming out. Tell us a little bit about how your spiritual journey began. How did this lead through to your near-death experience and what life's like for you today?
Wow. Well, my near-death experience started at 20 months old.
Gosh, young.
When, yeah, very young. When my mother beat me unconscious. I ran away from home that day because of the constant beatings that were going on.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
took it upon myself at 20 months old. I was done. I wasn't going to
Yeah.
have it anymore. And I just have a mind of my own. I mean, it doesn't, it doesn't, it's not right. It doesn't look right. It isn't right. So do something about it. Right. And
Mm.
so I watched the dog, hit the gate and he'd pop the latch and off he'd go. So I went out there and I pushed that gate and popped the latch and off I went. And I and the police, the Sacramento police officers, and I lived in California at that time.
Hmm.
They saw me walking down the median of the expressway. I was in barefoot in diapers with a little baby
Mm.
snap-on shirt, but I was going to go find my dad because my mom was she was out of control. And so the cops picked me up and they put me in their squad car and asked me where I was going. And I told them, I'm going to find my daddy because something is wrong with my mommy. And then they
Oh.
asked me to point out how to get back to my house because I was able to get there. They figured I could point my way back. And I wasn't going back there. I said no. So they took me to the candy store and bribed me with candy.
Oh, wow. Did it work?
I know. And they broke my will. I felt like, oh, I've got to tell them now. So I pointed my them back to my house and they brought me to the front door and my mom was opened the door and she's like, "Oh my God, where did you find her?" Acted like she was always so concerned about her. And once they felt like I was in good hands, they left and that's when my mom brought me inside and beat me unconscious. I was dead. I was so glad to be away from this. I mean, I was only here for 20 months.
Yeah.
Going back to where I came from, I felt safe. I felt like the struggle was over, that all ended. I wouldn't have to face it anymore. And then my mom threw a bucket of cold water on me to revive me. I don't think she cared about me as much as she cared about getting caught.
Mm.
And it snapped me right out of blew me right back into this world. And I was like, oh my God, I'm back here. Oh, what do I do now? I was in so much terror that there was no one around. I woke up in a puddle of water, and in that desperate moment, I just asked out loud for someone to help me. And that's when they showed up all around me. This is my book, my true story about this. It's a pretty big book. And they showed up all around me and they were tall, they were like 7 feet tall, lit up just like that photograph. And they just looked down at me and they weren't concerned about me at all. I looked at them and they started telepathically communicating to me about who I was, reminding me who I was, why I was here. And that they told me so many things. Even it's really interesting, Christy, because even to this day, I have like snapshots of things they showed me from that 20-month-old experience. Even to this day, I'm still comprehending, consuming what they showed me because they showed me so much in a
Mm.
in a in an instant. I mean, that's how it works. So in my case, what happened is instead of me having near death experience after near death experience after near death, where I'm out of my body all the time, they followed me back here. And that's what happened that day when they showed up and they had this conversation with me telepathically. And they made it the takeaway that day in the short of it is that I realized, and I mean body and soul, DNA, I understood deeply, completely that this life is not all there is.
Mm.
When I realized that, I was in such fear. My mom was so bad. I was in so much fear all the time. I never had fear again. From that one realization,
Mm.
it wasn't, see, when you're 20 months old, you don't have reason, but you know what you feel and you trust what you feel because that's all you have. You come from knowingness that you're born with that. And I knew from what they showed me and reminded me, I knew I was going to be more than okay in this lifetime. So based on that, they continued to show me things like they explained that the biggest tragedy of our times is that most people will die having lived fear-based lives.
Mm.
So it turned out that and and then not long after this I started I the first dream I remember coming into this life with was called the merry-go-round dream. And in that dream, it just confirms what they told me about this fear. I was on a merry-go-round with everyone I knew in the whole wide world on this merry-go-round with me at the top of a cathedral, inside a dome with all this ornate paintings and carvings and beautiful craftsmanship, just really old and ancient and Renaissance. And I'm holding on to the merry-go-round, just with everyone I knew in the whole wide world on this merry-go-round with me, loving the ride. It was just like the best time in my whole life until it started to speed up. And everyone I knew was getting scared. They were going into fear. There's that fear.
Mm.
And one by one, they were letting go and screaming to their deaths, splatting on the side of the dome of the walls, blood everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, they've got this all wrong. I'm on the merry-go. I'm always the last one on the merry-go-round. A lot of the things that came to me came through my dreams. So many, in fact, even this came through my dreams. I'll get to that as we move through this, where the guides work with me through my dreams. It was the number one way. I would never miss it. So, this thing about fear, they made it very clear to me from the beginning of my life that I too was in fear until I had this encounter with them at 20 months old when I asked out loud for someone to help me and they appeared. From that day forward, they've always come to me. I didn't have to die or do something crazy to blow out of my body to have this encounter with them. They've always been here with me. I've seen them. When in this photograph right here, I took this in 1994, this photograph of them when they showed up at Christmas time. So they come to me. Um, and that's just the way it's always worked. But from that out of body experience, I had, you know, over and over and over again, I had out of body experiences. I mean, yeah, out of body, not where I had to die to have
Mm. Mm.
experiences. Okay. And they would show up and they'd come in like teachers to help me understand things, to build my energy, to perfect my connection to them and others beyond them, uh, to help myself first. I mean, as a kid, I was in a bad way in that childhood home. It was
Mm.
not good. And so, that's basically that's the lowdown on how this all began.
Yeah. Wow. I'm curious to know, mostly because of my own experience, when you meet your, do we call them your spirit guides? Is that you call them your
Yeah,
spirit guides and your life coaches
yeah, they are.
before in
And
your
my
book?
best
Yeah.
friends. And my
And your
best friend.
best friends. Oh, I love that bit. Yeah. How, when they first appeared to you, how many were there? Was it quite clear that they were,
There were like 10 or 12 of them all around me. And
oh,
they,
okay, quite a
yeah,
few.
there was a whole mass of them. And it's like a choir, almost like a
Yeah.
choir, and they were suspended off the floor somewhat because they were light energy, light
Yeah.
beings. And I call them spirit guides and angels because that's as close as we can get to describing this. But when you actually see their photograph, the photograph of them, that's a light being, is what that really
Yeah.
is. And they've been with me my whole life. Um, yeah. So
Did
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm very curious about them. And did they have any features, or were they like light beings? You were just aware that they were filled with light. Could you tell them
yeah.
apart, or was it just a
No,
knowing?
they were universal. They were like a family of a certain origin
Yeah.
that were all they to me, they all looked what's interesting. Now this is interesting because people ask me this, and to this day, like I said, I'm still getting feedback from that moment in time at 20 months old.
Um,
Still getting feedback. I don't know why that is, but um to me, when in the moment that happened, you'd think that you'd say something like, "Who are you?"
mm,
Or you say, "I had no question about the fact that I was connected to them,
mm,
that I knew them, I remembered them, I trusted, totally trusted them. In fact, they're the only ones I trusted. Actually, they're the ones that I trust all the time.
mm,
In
mm.
this life, you know, people are, we're all learning here. We know we make mistakes and then we get it right sometimes, and hopefully we get it right a lot of times. But we're stumbling, and we come here to experience all the things that we need to
Mm,
grow and learn and evolve. So we're
mm.
not coming from perfection.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yes.
they are perfection. Oh, let me tell you, they never miss. They're always there. They uh they always point you in the right direction every time. It's
Yeah.
our doubting ourselves that cause us to go, well, maybe not right now, or I'll get around to it, when it's really all this guidance is time sensitive. Act on it now before it dwindles and it fades out and it loses its impact, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm,
So no, they just, to me, as a little baby, 20 months old, I never questioned. In fact, to this day, when I have all kinds of communication with all kinds of beings, I don't ever question who they are or why they're here. Or I don't go back to anything like that. I know they're here for a reason, and let's just get on with it.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that. I think it's actually quite amazing you've had it since such a young age to just automatically trust and understand that they're there. One of the reasons I asked about features and how many there were is because in my own experience, I had beings and there was probably 7 or 8 of them, not quite 10 or 12, but I was never permitted to see the features. And I've spoken to other near-death experiences who have similar stories of they met multiple beings, but they weren't allowed to see them or they didn't know what they were looking at. But what
Right.
strikes me about your story is just automatically from that young age, you had this experience, you trusted, and then you're able to grow with them in your life. Do you think we all have like these guides? We all have spirit guides. We all have this team of however many. Do you think we have the same amount of guides in our teams?
what in my particular case, they come through like specialists. I need something in particular.
I like
I'm
that
trying to
word.
figure, yeah, I'm trying to figure something out. Or even when we were designing this, I mean, me and them, there was a certain amount of guides that were specifically assigned to me to create. My background is in architecture,
Uh-huh.
graphic design, and home builder actually, and technology. I could get into that too, but um, so they knew when they came to me, and I've had this lifetime experience with them where I know they're there. I know they're always with me, and I can get answers when I need them. All right. But they they I'll go fast forward on this. It was I had this merry-go-round dream from the beginning of my life, and I've had the merry-go-round dream for 35 years, and it never changed or
Wow.
stopped. I couldn't do a thing about it because I love the dream. Oh my God, here I am on this merry-go-round with everyone I know in the whole wide world, and it's so good until they start to get fearful. There's the fear, and they start
Yeah.
letting go and they die and they scream. And I'm going, oh, I don't want to hear this again. I don't want to see this again. But the dream kept coming and coming every night, every single night. And at 35 years old, I started taking dream classes
Oh, cool.
because this dream would not leave me alone. I had to figure it out. And when I did that, that changed everything. I mean, it changed everything. That's when, yeah, like 3 years after was taking dream classes, they came to me. My dream teacher, it turns out that she was fooling around with the Ouija board with her friend. And they were getting good information because they weren't coming from fear when they did it. It all comes down to that, Christy. If you're coming from fear on anything you think, do, anything you act on, anything, if you're coming from fear, you're going the wrong way. So they were doing this, on the side. No one ever knew what they were doing, but my guides came through and asked them to have me in on a session. And they said, "Oh yeah, we'll have her, yeah." And a couple of weeks go by and they didn't. And their guides come through and said, "Listen, we need to have you Linda in on a session. We have something important to tell her." And they said, "Yeah, yeah, we'll get around to that." And then the third time they came through, they said, "We will no longer be coming through for you until you perform on this. It's important that we meet with Linda in a session." And that's when they had me over.
That's their guides or your
Their
guides?
guides, their guides.
Their guides, because that you can't connect with their guides directly, can you? Like it's
Uh,
their guides, not.
I guess you could, but I think I consider that snooping. So I have a kind of
Okay.
I don't really go there. So anyway, yeah, it was their guides. And so they had me over reluctantly. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't real chummy with my dream teacher, but in this case, I learned so much from her in the dream. She was so good as a dream teacher, but she
Yeah.
didn't walk or talk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I couldn't really respect her or anything like that, but she had me over and they tossed a pad of paper at me and a pencil and just said, "Start writing." Because they wanted to get back with their guides. They're annoyed by this, right? And my guides come through and they told me a number of things that all happened. So many things that happened. And finally they get to the point, they go, "The reason we had you here in this session," and they told me these things so that I'd see them play out, so they knew that they were my guides and this was for real, okay? Because they were using a Ouija board. So, you could kind of go, well, maybe this is true, maybe, but they showed me things that turned out and played out. And man, there's no question about it. That was my guides. And they asked me, they said, "Linda, if you're willing to," because it's the only time they ever asked me for anything. They said, "We need a new talking board, one that doesn't cause fear or caution, because as soon as the fear starts, it corrupts everything."
Mm.
So, and they said, "Would you be willing to build it out as we show you in your dreams what we need this to look like and work like?" And I said, Totally. Of course I am. 100%.
Mm.
And so in my dreams, they started coming through, and I'm drawing up little prototypes and, and this is all hand drawn. Um, and I got it together and everything. I wrote My Guided Journey. This is the companion journal to Guided, and it teaches people how I learned it. I started journaling at 7 years old because
Wow.
I was in this world, but I was getting all this activity from this other world, the one I came from my guides.
Mm.
And I was having trouble, especially as I got older, assimilating this, keeping it together without pushing that away and just doing this so that nobody would get on me, nobody would question me, nobody would call me crazy. Instead of pushing that away, I started journal writing. And that's when I realized I was channeling them. I was getting guidance in infiltrating my journal writing. They were coming through, and I'd see things that were written down that I didn't write. I didn't think, but there it is. I wrote it. It was like automatic writing after a while. So from doing that, I became so good at living in two worlds at once without anyone ever noticing. It's the only way I could keep my cool. The family
Mm.
I was in was just, they were destructive. They were bad. And the society I was in, I grew up in the 50s, was unconscious, quite frankly. So
Mm.
I was like the only one that in fact, the one thing that everyone told me, kids in school, my family, everybody I ever knew, they said, Linda, you don't get it. I was like, I don't get it. They never knew what I did. They never knew I was doing this.
Mm.
They never knew that I had help. I had help whenever I needed it. They never had any of that. They pushed it away. See, we all come in with this. They pushed it away and forgot they ever had it.
Mm.
While I built it, I built on it because I was in a bad situation. I needed help.
Mm.
So for me, from the beginning of my life, I will never know what it would have been like had they never come into my life and this whole thing started. I don't know the difference. I guess I would have been fearful, like most people.
Mm.
I would have been one of the people on the merry-go-round that would have been scared and let go.
Mm.
So it started so early in my life, and I had this connection to something so good
Mm.
that whenever I needed help, they taught me how to, they taught me how to fly, out of body experiences. They
Mm.
taught me how to fly. They taught me how to not question why I'm in two places at once. When I caught
Yeah.
myself doing that I was about 4 years old.
Yeah.
They taught me, I mean, they were there with me all the time, teaching me all the time. And I didn't have friends. I didn't have friends. And my family was a mess. So
Mm.
I would have been a mess had this never come to me, had I never asked. You see, I tell people all the time, write it down, whatever's coming through, write it down, date it. Make sure you do that because it saved my life. It made my life. And I know how well it works. It literally gave me it allowed me to be intelligent. See, I believe we're all that way, but we repress this part of us so much
Mm. Mm.
that all we are is, when you're just in this world, you're stuck here.
Mm.
You're not living your life. You're not living your life. You don't have an option. You're just stuck here. I remember what that felt like until I was 20 months old.
Why do you think we do that? Like, why do you think when we're
Fear,
here, we're
fear,
so
fear,
absorbed?
fear,
Fear.
fear, fear,
Okay.
fear, fear. In fact, the first chapter in this journal, the first chapter, there's 18, is fear.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. It
second
controls a
chapter,
lot, doesn't it?
it destroys a person. The second chapter is ask. You can literally ask your way out of fear. I'm not joking.
Uh-huh. Who do we ask? The guides?
You ask. And how do you validate what you asked? You have to write it down. You have to write it down. You have to write it down. You have to write it down and date it. Date it. If you don't date it, when you go to review what you wrote, you won't know what happened first and what's the next sequence. You're still scattered.
Mm,
Everybody is scattered, distracted, scattered, scared,
mm,
fearful. I mean,
mm,
you know what? No wonder we can't, no wonder our lives don't work. And it's where we give up our power. The first fear, it could be as simple as this. The first fear, the baby's born, and they pick the baby up and they smack it on the hiney. That could be the first fear right there.
mm,
This is a hostile place.
mm.
The message is bad.
Yeah.
So the fear drives us and it controls us. In fact, without getting political or getting too crazy here, that's why our lives are the way they are to the most part, is because we're controlled by fear.
Mm. So you think that we're born with fear or we come
No,
out and that's the first feeling
no,
we have?
we're not born with fear. No,
So why is it so strong? Why do we all have so much fear?
because it's the dominant approach in this life. When you come into this world, they control you by using fear, threats, fear. If you don't do this, that'll happen. Consequences. In fact, that's a big part of fear is consequences. People don't want to take risk because they're afraid of the consequences. I could lose. I could go bankrupt. You know,
Yeah.
the people who are really successful, they don't think like that. Did you know
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
They
yeah, I
don't
do know that. It's
they,
it's tough
they
though.
don't think.
Fear is very real for all of us.
No, no, not once you start writing about what that fear is in you. Yours is different than anyone else's,
Mm,
just like your blueprint. You're unique. So you've got to write down those fears. Identify the fears. What is controlling me? What is hurting me? What's holding me back? What causes me to choke up? What
mm,
causes me to not be able to speak my truth? And you know what? In this world, justifiably, you take a big risk when you speak your mind. Another reason why writing in a journal is critical.
mm,
Here, you can tell yourself the truth. You can write it down and you can tell yourself the truth. Dare to tell your truth out in the outer world. Dare to do that. And you'll probably get your head chopped off. But you can tell your truth right here. And the more you exercise telling yourself the truth, the second part of this journal, there's 4 qualifying questions in this journal. Write down whatever was unusual or out of the ordinary that day, or the lie you told, or the truth you told, and the consequences that you felt from it. Write it all down. Here's where you can write everything down. You don't have to mask anything here. You've got to be able to express the truth somewhere, or you will continue to sabotage yourself and live in
mm.
fear. The only way to release the fear is to start telling yourself the truth. Okay. The second question in this is write down how what you wrote down felt.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
If now, once you write down how it felt, Christy, once you write it down, how it felt, really flesh it out, not just, oh, it felt good or bad. No, I'm talking about pour your heart out on the part that asks you how what you wrote down makes you feel. When you do that really well, when you really, really flesh it out, the next thing that comes is the third one. And it's you will have a realization. Instantly, you will realize something. This is what I learned to do at 7 years old.
Mm,
You will know something you did not know before you wrote it down and then asked yourself how it felt. You will
mm.
know something. And from that realization, the action you take, which is the fourth question, what action will you take, is obvious to you.
Mm,
It's not something you have to drill down on and think real hard. No, no, it comes right to you, just like the realization did. After you really write down and flesh out how it made you feel. That's the key. How anything makes you feel. When you write it down, you you know, you labor through it. You write it all down. That's that's where that's where the magic is. It saved my life, you guys. When I was 16, I couldn't stand it anymore. I got pregnant on purpose. On
Oh,
purpose.
okay. Yeah.
I had to get, they wouldn't let me go. Okay. I was my mother's
Stay.
Cinderella.
Oh, your
I was,
parents. Yeah.
yeah, I was my mother's Cinderella. I did everything. She, and when I got pregnant on purpose, she just about flipped out because she was going to lose her Cinderella, her maid. Okay.
Mm,
And, and I got out. They let me marry my high school boyfriend and basically emancipating me. And, within 3 years, I became a home builder. I was studying under an architect to become an architect.
mhm,
I literally was building my own homes.
mm,
No formal education.
mm. Love
I
it.
was, I was guided. My guides said, very simple. They don't make a big thing out of things. They came to me at 19 years old. They said, your marriage isn't going to work out. Oh my God. Okay, 20 minutes of that. Because I'm used to having them tell me things that it may not always be what I want to hear, but it's what I
Mm,
need to know. All right.
mm.
So people will ask you sometimes, they'll say, well, do the guides ever tell you anything bad? No, it's your interpretation of the information that makes it bad or good. Okay.
Okay.
So I was used to getting information from them all the time. I mean, they were my buddies. They are my buddies. And when they told me that, I was like 20 minutes in, oh my God. And then I said, okay, now what? This is just how my life has been with these guides.
Mm,
So I asked my husband, I said, he was a carpenter. I said, I want to meet the architect that draws the plans for the houses that you are on the crew that builds these houses. He goes, why? I said, because I want to learn. He goes, okay. We were both young.
mm.
And he takes me and I meet the guy and he goes, I don't have time for you. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, thank you for meeting me. I appreciate that. And so a couple years later, after I had we built a couple of houses. We bought the houses and did sweat equity under another builder. And that's how we paid for our down payment, and this is how we did a couple of them. And I had a house designed and I brought it back to that same architect. I said, I want you to help me draft this so I can build it because I've got the lot and I bought the lot with the first house we built. I sold you know, and I built that first house and it was tough. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but once I did the first one, I knew what I was doing. And I did next time I built three of them. I built next time I built five of them. I built a subdivision of them. I developed land. No formal education,
It's great.
guided. Okay, so I can only say that my childhood boot camp, that's really what it really is was the heavy learning, the connection that I built, the understanding how to know when to act on something, when to get in it, when to get out, when to say something, when not to say something, how to read people, how to figure things out.
Mm,
I had learned. I had no friends. All I did was master this. It was crazy. And I had these guides with me all the time, right there with me, grooming
mm,
me.
mm,
I'm telling you, Christy, I couldn't miss. I was, and then that was about 1970, 71. By 1976, 77, the guides came to me and they said, I was on fire. I mean, real estate was white hot. They said, sell everything. Don't plan anything out into the future. Don't buy any more land. Sell all your rentals, sell everything.
mm.
And I said, I had a big subdivision going. I said, okay. I said, I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
I mean, things were going so well. I said, tell me this isn't happening. They said, sell everything. I'm going, okay. Because I know better than to question
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I said, oh my God. It took me 18 months because a builder, you're way out in the future, right?
Yeah,
It took
exactly.
me 18 months to build them out, sell them, get rid of everything. And 3 months before the real estate market crashed, I was liquid.
Wow,
Three
I
months.
knew you were going to say that.
Oh my
That's
God.
amazing, isn't it?
And everyone, what the people were watching me do this, and people had their eye on me because I was a woman in the building trades at a
Yeah.
time when there were no women. Women were secretaries. They weren't builders,
Mm,
it's
mm,
architects and stuff. So they uh they came to me beforehand and they said, my comrades, they said, why are what are you building next, Linda? What's next? I said, there is no next. And they said, why? And I said, because there's going to be a real estate crash. And they said, what? Because
mm,
everything, it was white hot,
mm,
Christy. You
mm,
wouldn't believe how, I mean, it didn't look like it was ever going to end. And
mm,
everybody was making so much money. Um, and it gets a hold of you if you're not, you don't see anything anymore. You're blinded by the money.
mm,
And but I wasn't. I mean, I can't afford to be. I never could, right? So I said there's going to be a real, and they all looked at me and they said, "Well, they said you're going to make it happen because you're getting out." I said, "What?
Yeah, I see what they're
You
saying.
mean me? I mean, one little person." I go, "I can make a real estate crash happen." What? That was crazy. I made them look at the thing they said to me.
Yeah.
And sure as can be, they all they lost their mansions, their fake marriages, their Ferraris.
Yeah.
I lost
Yeah.
everything. And I was completely out of it, completely clean. And then it wasn't like more than a year after that happened. My guides come to me and they tell me, real estate will never be the same for you again, Linda.
Hmm.
I'm like, what? That's all I knew.
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
that's all I knew how to do. I said, why? They said, because you got over your anger issues.
mm,
I said, my anger issues? I had anger? They said, oh, yeah. See, they're real gentle with you. They're real matter of fact. They're real consistent. And they're always there. I mean, how much better could you ask to have a best friend and a life coach? It doesn't get better than this.
mm,
Best friends and life coaches, they are solid and they never let you down. They'll be the only friend that you had that never lets you down. Never.
mm. Linda, are you happy to share? You've got your talking board. We can see it's there. I notice when you're using it, you're just rubbing back and forth. What is the thing that you're rubbing with? Are you happy
Okay,
to show
I'll,
us?
I'll, I'll present it a couple of different ways. This talking board, they optimized it, in the what they showed me, they wanted this to be universal. It's the universal, ask the universal channel. And what they said is they wanted it to be optimized for use with a pendulum because
Mm,
most people are used to using a pendulum. All
mm,
right. So it's small enough, the circumference is small enough where it's easy for the pendulum to reach the letters and the numbers without any trouble. But
mm,
for me, the pendulum is too slow. After you learn to use it with this is included with it. This is the clochette, the speller, and this is what's included with it. And I just find this to be easier. In fact, you don't even need this. You can just go like this.
okay, so for those on the audio version, you're just rubbing your finger back and forth.
Yeah, just back and forth. And what that is, instead of sometimes they'll go like this, but I'll just let them come through. There's that breath.
Mm,
Highest energy, utilizing the planchette that they're talking about this reads like a like a story. It reads like a story. Okay. Where when you're using this, it's a little more choppy. So what they're saying is, this does work. I mean, it's
mm,
optimized for the use with a pendulum. And I'm going to say 75% of the people who get this use a pendulum.
Mm,
But I'm I learned with this, okay? So this is faster. When you learn to use it, start with this. If you're patient enough to start with this, because it takes a little bit longer, because it's less natural for you to do it this way, to go, am
mm,
I moving? Is it my hand moving it? Is it, you
mm,
go through all that stuff. But for me, this is just, I like this.
mm. So it's a round, for those who can't see this, it's the actual board itself, the talking board is a round
Yeah, it's round.
thing. It's got the alphabet
The
on it.
alphabet. Hmm.
Um, oh, there we go. Okay, so if you're watching the video version, the Universal channel,
Ask the
ask the
universal
Universal
channel.
channel. So it's got numbers around the middle. It's got yes, no, and then all of the alphabet letters.
Right,
Okay.
right,
That's cool. And so you just intuitively pick up on where the little round disc that you're rubbing back and forth on it should go.
right. This goes with
Yeah.
it. This is just part of what goes with it. My experience with these guides, and the many times I was driving one time, I was building these houses, and in the midst of all of it, and I was driving from one project to another, and I went out of my body, and I'm like, I don't know, I had to be 100 feet above my car, as I'm driving it. I'm out of my body, and
Uh-huh.
and you know, you know what I'm talking about, and I'm watching myself amongst all the other uh ant farms, a big ant farm. We're all busy, we're all like in the rat race. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
A rat race, and I was one of them. I watched myself in it from above, and I
Mm-hmm.
went, oh, and I knew then. That was just before the guide said what they told me about the real estate crash.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew then that something was going to happen. They were reaching out to me. That was like a precursor to the warning. So that happened just before they came through and said, get out of real estate, out all the way.
Mm.
So you always have these little things that come before that happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, that urgency, that right now, don't waste any more time. Do it now. You get these little tidbits of urgency
Yeah.
that show you things so that when that big urgency comes through and they tell you, don't stop, don't pass, go, just go straight through, go, do it. And that's what it's been like in my life. I mean, they don't fool around. They say it straight out.
Yeah.
And if you don't hear it with auditorially, you don't hear it with your ears. It's like a download. You just know it, okay? Or
Yep.
you
That
feel it,
inner knowing.
right? You feel it here. You feel it. When you feel it here, it's serious. I mean,
Mm,
this is like primal, okay?
mm.
This here is coming from connection, love. It's connection. But this is the alarms go off,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
act, do it now, listen, you know, and it could also be fear, though. You could get it here and it hits you here. You are in fear,
So
in
how
in
do we
fear that's not
discern?
justified, in fear that's not justified. Go ahead.
Okay. How do we discern what's fear and what's the actual message coming through from our spirit guides?
Did How to discern it?
Yeah.
This.
The stomach,
See,
the
yeah, when it hits you here, you get, let's say, okay, let me use this as an example. You fall in love.
yeah,
You feel it here, but you've been burned before, right? Hit
you
you
feel it in
here.
your gut.
It's like,
It's like your
whoa,
gut feeling.
your guard goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it may not be true. I mean, you don't even know the person really. It could be true. It could be telling you, no, 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 that's the wrong person. It could be telling you that. That's why you need to write it down.
Okay.
You consult with yourself first. You have this conversation by writing it down with yourself first. The second thing that happens is they step in, and that's when they infiltrate your writing. It's automatic writing. It just
Yeah.
starts to happen. It's just like with this. when they come through, they come through and they speak to you. This is I can do this talk to them on command with this. But when writing in your journal, it's the framework. It's the beginning point that everyone can do without having to learn to do this first. This
Yeah.
comes next, but this comes first. The conversation with yourself first, and then you'll start to notice, oh, I don't remember writing that part down. That's them. That's them
Mm,
coming through.
mm. Yeah, it's fascinating what can come through when we just create the space and write and ask for direction, ask for what have they got to
Ask,
tell us, just being
ask.
available. I love it. You talk about how we need to just trust and we need to really listen and open up to these messages. You're right, we feel it. How does someone become better at trusting that it's the guides? For ages, I used to get the message, and like you said with the real estate thing, you telling you to sell it all up and close it down. You don't want to hear that. Sometimes I've had to learn the hard way, and I just know now when the message is there, I know I can avoid it and I can push it away and try to do my own thing and just put it over to one side. But I know now that particular voice, I'll always end up coming back round to it and back round to it until I face the thing that the voice is telling me to do. I call it the voice. It's probably more of an
Right.
intuition.
But that's right.
That's why I was asking, how do we know to trust that voice?
You
Is it
won't.
just practice?
You won't until you write it down.
Right.
You have
Okay.
see here's what's going on. We are so busy in our lives just going,
Oh,
just
yeah.
okay. When you write it down, you have to stop. When you write it down, it becomes still, still. That part of your life becomes still. It's it's on the pages. It's not going anywhere. You can
Mm,
remember it. You don't have to remember it. It's right here. And dating each one of these, it's in chronological order. So when you go to review what you wrote, which is so critical,
mm,
a week later, a month later, you go through your journal entries and you read through them and you go, oh my God, now I know why. I know that you're down the road a little bit, a month or two down the road. You go, now I see why that happened. I
mm,
knew it was coming. I
mm,
knew it was, we're unconscious.
mm,
When
mm,
we write it down, it teaches us to be conscious and truthful in
mm,
our day to day life. Oh, we want to nice it all up. We want to make it better than it is because we don't like it.
mm.
We can't get away with that when we do this. It keeps us on the straight and narrow and it keeps us connected in two worlds.
Yeah, yeah. Because I do believe we can be in two worlds at once. I do believe we are here to have this experience and learn from it and be very physical, but we are also very spiritual. So, yeah, I don't know if it's about finding the balance or it's just, for me, it's so much of it is about trusting and just getting back to what resonates. What do I really feel? And you've talked about gut feelings quite a bit. I do believe we feel it in our gut, in our intuition, in our we just know. We just know when we need to do things. And that's why I always say, let's listen to those little inklings, let listen to those little signals that are happening, which
You
is what
know,
you've talked about as well before you get the alarm bells and then just do it.
you know why we don't listen?
Is it fear again?
We don't want to hear it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look, I'm one of those people quite often. I don't want to hear it, but I now
And so,
know that I'll
well,
come back and have to do it anyway.
that's right. And when we don't want like your marriage isn't going to work out at 19 years old. Oh my God, you know, 20 minutes of that. And I said, well, what's next? I mean, that's a pretty fast release at
Yeah,
19 years
that's
old,
very fast.
and that what it is that only happened
Writing
through
it down.
writing it down. 7 years old, I started journal writing. At 7 years old,
Yeah, yeah, I
that
love
I
it.
was I was desperate to find the answers. This makes no sense to me. My family's whacked. The society is completely off base. I can't make sense of this. And I certainly can't go to somebody and ask for help. Nobody knew what I was knowing.
Mm,
So,
mm,
and I got to tell you, we're all, I think the fact that I was so, I died. I died.
mm,
And then my mom throws that bucket of cold water on me to shock me, literally, pow, right back into this life. I mean, I got a big dose of um, desperation. That's it. Desperation. And in
mm,
that desperate moment, that's when people wake up. They wake up when it's almost too late.
mm.
Okay. That it doesn't need to be like that. That's where my book
Yeah.
guided. My guided is my true story. It's about how I've done this and how I learned it from the time I came into this life. It talks about all the instances that trigger people. What it did, what it has done for people, it triggers them. I remember that. I've had that. I've done that. I know that. Okay,
Mm,
it wakes them up. They remember. They start to remember, and that's where the journal came in. I had to create the journal because it's fast to the point, no fluff, gets right to it. And when people write in the journal in part three, on a daily basis, they write and they write every night. I suggest
mm,
doing it before you go to sleep at night. It's the best quiet time. It's a time where your head's not filled with stuff, and you can just have this conversation with yourself first, and then watch the conversation with them start to creep in. It
mm,
sneaks
mm,
up on you. It's beautiful. Okay, because you don't really notice it all the time when you first write it in there, but upon review, that's when you see it because you're removed from it. And
mm,
if you made it up, if you're lying to yourself or you're saying stuff that's just nonsense, upon review, everyone knows BS when they see it.
mm, mm. It's
And we're
accountability too, isn't it? That it's in writing, it's there. It
Yeah,
did happen.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
nothing to be ashamed of. It's beautiful when you spot where you're off track and you go, "Oh, I don't want that. I know better than that. I want better than that. I won't settle for that." That's the
Mm,
old me. That's the me that comes from fear, that wants to be a people pleaser, that wants to, you know, all that kind of stuff. That
mm,
completely, you're not living your life for you, you're living it for everyone else.
mm, mm,
And you didn't come here to do that, right?
mm. Yeah. So this leads into, I've got a couple of questions that I really would like to ask you. One is, you said we didn't come here to do that. Do you think you chose this life before you came here? Because you've had a pretty rough upbringing.
Let's let them talk about that. Did
Okay,
we,
yes, I want to get to
yeah,
that too.
did
I've
we
got quite a
choose,
few things.
did we choose this life? Yes. Why would we do that?
Yeah, and such a hard one.
Okay, let me ask a question about
Yeah.
this. Is this lifetime, with all that's going on in the world, wow, is this one of the most challenging ones? Yes. Quite challenging, we will say, but that is the that's the fun of it. A or at various times, did this is going to be a question. Did you ever think you planned it along the way? That's a question to you.
At various times did I think I planned my life along the way. I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I'm going to say yes. I think we have things we can choose.
Give that more time to unfold. You
Ooh.
will be delighted with the answers you get because we are there.
Oh, I love it. I like the word delighted, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't usually use that word. You when you
No.
have this, yeah, when you have this connection, same thing in your journal. When you're writing and you're having a conversation with yourself, that's when you get comfortable with having this conversation with yourself. That's when they start to pop in. Just like right
Yeah.
now. There,
Yeah.
except this is on command. I mean, once you learn how to use a journal, this becomes, and I will say this, just from doing that little bit, you get warm. I feel I'm warm, like I can feel it. The
Mm.
energy comes through the back of your shoulders and down your torso, through your arms and your hands. And I can feel it like on my forehead. You feel warm, and that's them coming through.
Oh, yes.
So
Oh,
when you're
it's so
writing in your
cool.
journal, when you're writing in your journal and you're feeling that feeling like, oh, I've got to turn that fan on or the air conditioner up, that's guidance. The guides are coming through you. Like it could be many. In fact, how many are here right now coming through? Three. Even when you think it's heat, that begins to get you vibrating at the right speed. So we have new light. You will get a big big feedback meaning information download. Okay,
Mm.
feedback right through your right through your body. So every time you do this, every time you write in your journal, every time you work with the guides, breathe. And always breathe, breathe, breathe. We hold our breaths.
Oh, I do.
Breathe.
Oh, sometimes I'm like, what if I just held my breath for a minute, not a minute literally, but I don't even notice it.
I know. It's because you focus. You
Yeah.
focus real intently. When you do
Yeah.
that, you go shallow and you can't help it because it's like you're trying to get it. You're figuring it out. But then you have to sit back and go, oh, and open up your shoulders and your
Yeah.
back and your
Yeah.
neck and breathe. And the best breath to do this work is that yawn. When you finally reach that yawn, is like, oh, I feel such a relief. It's
Oh,
such a good
yes.
feeling.
Love
Yeah.
a good yawn.
And so it's just, you guys, it's just the simplest, what I'm talking about. When you were a little kid, bam, you could do this in a heartbeat.
Uh-huh.
You just have to go back to that pure part of yourself, the part of yourself where you don't care what anyone thinks about you.
Mm. Mm. It's tricky, but yeah,
It's
I mean,
tricky,
even if we just find a private spot, people don't need to know we're doing this. That's what I love.
and you can't
Just
let
being
them know.
open.
You can't let them know. It, I learned this as a kid. I didn't let anyone know I had guides. I never,
Mm.
ever let anyone catch me talking to them.
Mm.
Actually, you know what brought this about? This? When I
Mm.
was a kid, of course, I wrote the journal. This was published in 2018, but the formula is what I'm talking about. Was the formula I learned to do from my guides
Mm.
at 7 years old. What happened is throughout, my before school, I could go out in the sandbox where, no one was around and have these fabulous conversations with my guides. Man, I
Yeah.
figured everything out doing that. Do we remember doing this? Yes, as little kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then by 7 years old, kindergarten, first grade, second, I'm going, well, they're going to lock me up. I can't be talking out loud. I can't be having these conversations. So I started writing in my journal, and this is where the conversation continued to play out, where
Mm.
nobody thought anything was off base.
Mm.
And that was really how that came about when I was a kid, because I couldn't. I didn't have the freedom I had when I was younger.
Mm, mm,
I had to figure out, how do I do it now under this pressure, under these conditions where I'm in school with other kids and the teachers, and I can't ever let anyone really know me. That's why I didn't have friends. I couldn't let them in, or they would have, oh, I don't even know what they would have done. 1950s,
who knows? Yeah.
I don't want to know. I just, I never trusted him with it. So it just kept on growing and growing. I didn't want to be interrupted. I didn't want to have to explain it. If you
Mm,
ever feel like you have to do that, that's where this comes in. You never, ever, ever let anybody see what you're writing. Never. Because as
mm.
soon as you do that, you're going to start whitewashing what you're writing.
Yeah, it's not going to be fully there, fully open. And yeah, I always have that fear that someone might find it. You talked, Linda, about having many, many, many out of body experiences. Is this something that you can do on demand? Does it happen at a certain time? Can we all do this?
Let's let them answer.
There was a lot of questions all at once.
No, no, they know. They've got this. First, you heal the fear.
Make that sound so easy.
Okay, you know what they're saying here, the fear. I'll just use something I said earlier about when I would go out of body. I was probably
Yeah.
four, I don't know. I was going in and out of body. And I looked down at myself on the bed and I went, how can I be at two places at once? I slammed back into my body. I mean, I'm landing right back in it. And I slammed in it so hard that my head hurt. And I felt so tired from it. I went to sleep like a little
Yeah.
nap. And the guides come through my dream and they tell me, you can do this as much as you want to, Linda, as long as you don't question why you are in two places at the same time.
Oh, that is hard.
I woke up from that dream and I went, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I have this. I love this. And at that point, I started, because, when the guides talk to you, it's powerful. It's
Mm,
like God speaking to you, You if that
mm.
if they said it, I can totally do this. I know I can. So after that, I went out of body on command whenever I wanted to, all the time, all the time, all the time, until my mom one day when I was out of body, I played with it constantly. I did it whenever I wanted to. She screamed my name. My mom, when she wanted us, she'd scream our names. I'm just like, so earth shattering. It was like so disrupting.
Mm.
I slammed back in my body. I was like, oh my God, I will never go out of body again in this house, ever.
Oh.
So that then at that point, I'm sharing this with you and your audience, your viewers, because it's something when you do this out of body work, you have to be absolutely sure that you're alone and that nothing can do that to you, just shock you back into your body. Like when she threw that bucket of cold water, shock you back
Mm,
into, that's the worst feeling, you guys. And it's a very subtle, sensitive, powerful experience. And you've got to be really careful that even turn your phone, everything has to go off. You need total privacy. Again, that's why I tell you, never ever show anyone what you're writing in your journal. It
mm,
ruins it. It ruins
mm.
it. You need total privacy. So, did that answer your question?
Do you know, honestly, I don't even know what my question was anymore.
That's
I'm
another.
just absolutely
Okay,
listening.
what was her question? Find out what
Oh, on demand, can
to
you?
yeah, what to do when you go out of body on command. Yeah. Okay, so can we go out of body on command? Yes, of course. Healing the fear
That's right.
first. They're going to keep coming back to the fear. This thing with fear has here's how bad that is. We come into this life and we play and we live a cautionary life. So we don't live our life. We live our
Yeah.
life on caution mode. so that, you know, pretty much you won't, you get hurt, but not too bad. You get hurt a little, but you can handle that much pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
You compromise. Okay. So that's what this journal takes you through. 18 chapters of all these
Mm,
things that you start to see in your journal writings in part three. You start to see the patterns and go, oh, well, I keep seem to keep doing this and I seem to keep doing that. Then you go to part two and you identify the chapter. They're only like 2.5 pages long. The chapter that stopped you out.
mm,
And a lot of times it's compromise. A
mm,
lot of times. Fear. Oh, some people can remember their early fears. Most people can't. Because after all, when you got shocked like that, you just want to forget it.
mm,
And you want to play it safe. Compromise. The first compromise, if that's the end of it,
mm.
you bury the fear with compromise. That nices it all up.
Yeah, it kind of, yeah, it really does. It gives into it. It changes the ability to face the fear in the future, doesn't it?
Yes,
Because it gets more comfortable.
it
Yeah, it
justifies
justifies
it.
it. Yeah, that's the right word. Yeah, fear is such a big part of life, isn't it?
It's
Such a big
terrible.
part.
It's not
I
supposed to
know.
be like this.
So many thoughts around this. We all have fear. Fear, it's got to be one of the biggest life lessons.
I'd say it's number one.
Yeah, because if you think of love, love outshines fear. Love changes fear.
You know,
Yes.
one thing, and the only thing that could possibly trump love, and that's a big
For
order,
me, yeah, it's the big one.
is gratitude.
Ah, they're very closely intertwined, aren't they? Very closely.
When you have gratitude, when in fact in guided, I talk about how I came out of that childhood with enormous gratitude. I couldn't believe how much gratitude. I had enough gratitude for the whole world.
Mm.
I survived. I came out of that childhood alive. That was, believe me,
Yeah.
I
Was
had
that a good thing?
enormous.
Because you were
It,
coming back to an awful, awful environment.
oh my God. When I got out of that, nothing in the world could ever hurt me like that again, ever, 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 and never has. In fact, one of the things my guides told me in that 20-month-old instance,
Mm.
he said, life will get better for you as you get older if you can make it through childhood. How about that?
Wow. Okay. That's big. Did that scare you?
No, because the only part I latched onto was because I was in my childhood
Yeah.
was life will get better for me.
Yeah, I
This was going
suppose
to
just
be
hang on to that.
if I and as far as getting through childhood, I felt like I could do anything. Okay, so I felt so big and
Yeah.
strong because of them because I they had my back. I knew I could count on them whenever I needed them. Even
Yeah.
when I didn't know I needed them, they would
Yeah.
show up.
Isn't that cool? That's so
It's the
cool.
best. It's the
Mm,
absolute best, you know? And for them to come to me and ask me, 1988, this is 35, has had its 35-year anniversary. For them to come to me and say, Linda, would you be willing to do? They saw what humanity is going through now and about to go through then.
mm, mm, mm,
And they saw me as playing a part in this. They saw it.
mm,
And I said, why would I say no? That would be no reason for me to do that. And I didn't say no. So, I mean, I can tell you so many things, great things that they've told me, and
mm,
things that were just reality based, you know, deal with it or your life will get harder.
mm,
You have
mm,
free will, you can do what you want, but your life will get harder
mm. There's
if
a
you
lot of
don't listen.
trust there, isn't there? We have to trust and we have to listen and we get to know the voice. We get familiar with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's always, I will say this, when guidance comes through, it is never, ever loud. If it's loud, it's not guidance.
Interesting. Because I find the quietest voices the loudest. They're almost the most authoritative or the most powerful,
Now,
but they
is this,
don't shout. Yeah, they do it quietly, but it's very,
it's respectful
yeah, yeah, I suppose.
because
I,
you have free will. They can't trample on your free will, and they never do.
yeah. Do you think we can get this life wrong? Do you think we can make
Oh, all the time.
decisions and
Oh, most of
actually
the time.
break our life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're like most of the time, most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Does it
And I
matter
say,
though in the long run?
well, the problem is people, they don't, we spend our whole life here being academic in this world, just in this world. That's all we invest every breath in just being in this world.
Yeah.
What's that all about? Everything that you make in this world, you can't take with you.
Yeah.
And you come here to be compliant, and that's it? No. You came here to be creative. You're a creator. You came here to
Mm,
learn about yourself and just be everything that we are such a small part of who we really are when we decide to come into these bodies.
yeah,
We
I believe
the,
so.
yeah, we have to ratchet the energy down so far that we forget who we are.
Uh-huh.
But and everybody is so busy being compliant in this world, just in this world, that
Mm.
it just ruins the fun, you know? It really does.
Oh,
And I'll tell you something people have told me my whole life. They get mad at me for this. Number one, where do you get all that energy? You know, and
yeah,
it comes from
yeah.
having this connection. It comes from having this connection. Another one is, Linda, you make everything look so easy. Well, that's because I'm having fun at what I do and I do what I love.
Wow.
That's why it looks easy. So those are two of the bonuses you get when you learn how to follow guidance, when you learn how to uh, you learn how to identify the guidance, interpret the guidance, and act on it.
How flexible do you think we can be in there? I'm someone who likes to push boundaries, and my whole life I've had to work out how to do things a slightly different way to what everyone else is doing. And there's some really good things that come out of that. There's also some frustration.
Okay. Oh, of course.
Can can we bend the, it's not the rules, is it? Like what we're feeling. I don't even
Now,
know how to express what I'm saying. Are
say,
you understanding what I'm saying?
say it in a different way. Give yourself a chance to say it in a different way.
Yeah, thank you. It's around having a go and not necessarily doing it right. Life
Okay.
purpose,
Okay.
what
Not
the
being
what the
perfect,
spirit guides are talking to us about doing. Just having a go in whatever way we feel we can do.
not being perfect out of the gate. See, this is your own creation. So
Yeah.
there's no roadmap for this. There's no rules for this. You're coming out of the gate and you're already feeling a little insecure about, oh, what if they don't like it? What if it doesn't jibe with what's going on with them? What if, and that's the first one because it's never been done before. Nobody else is doing it. Oh my God, am I going to be the first one that comes out with this? Am I the first one to speak about it? Okay, it's all that. Yes, you are. And the fact that it's not out there yet, there's nothing they can do to it because they don't even know what it is.
Mm,
You have to be excited about being bold. You have to be excited. If you bring your excitement into the conversation, into the explanation, into the into the into the risk you're about to take. If you're excited about it, you believe in it, then you're blind, literally blind to what anybody else is going to think, say, or do.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, it's a form of insanity. Okay, but
Oh, great.
it's absolutely true. Einstein was had that. Okay, he had that.
Yeah.
And he didn't care about what somebody thought about him. I never could
Yeah.
afford. I am I saying your name right, Christy?
Kirsty. Yep,
Christy.
that's
Um,
fine.
yeah. I never cared. That's why people ask me all the time, Linda, you don't get it. I just go, I guess that's a good thing. I'll take that as a good thing because I'm having a fabulous time and I
Yeah.
love what I'm doing. Oh my God, what I'm learning. And oh, I would never, ever give this up. In fact, one
Yeah.
thing begets another, begets another and another. And it just takes me down my yellow brick road and it gets better. I love my life. So anybody, and I'm sure people, mostly they sit back. My family, when I became a success, I was a serious success by 22 years old. They sat back like this and they said, they were insulted by my success. I
Oh,
didn't know,
really?
yeah, I didn't know I was going to be a success. I didn't plan on it. All
Yeah.
I did, I followed you guys. It's not about being successful, it's about following your bliss. And now, following your guidance is your bliss. It's your bliss.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
follow your bliss. It's a form of insanity. That's a beautiful thing because it takes all the fear out of it, and you're not worried about the consequences,
Mm,
or you're not, and you're certainly not in fear or compromising or any of that. I mean, everyone else is sitting back going, "Oh, I'd be
mm,
terrified," you know.
mm,
No, I can't
mm,
get enough of it, and
mm,
that's what this does. This gives you your life back.
mm. I think there's such an element of we don't have to understand how it's all going to work out. And I think that's where I'm coming back to answering my own question, actually, of
That's a good one.
if we feel we need to do something, take an action somewhere, or we've just got an inkling, this is our our spirit team telling us just to do whatever or direct our life in a certain way, just have a go. Because I get worried about doing things maybe not the right way or not to the fullest. But as we step out, we might get a little bit braver. As we try things, we might have bigger understanding. Thanks,
You know
Linda.
what?
I think I just went full circle to answer my own question.
Absolutely. And you know what? Here's what'll happen. You keep true to it's called being true to yourself.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
remain true to yourself, no matter what, no matter what.
Love it. And not worrying about the consequences, not worrying about the
No,
outcome.
no,
I think
because
if we do it with the right intention as well,
there's
I
no
guess
death
that,
sentence. The only
yeah,
death, the only
wow,
death sentence there is if you fall into fear and compromise. Those are for sure death sentences.
yeah. Gosh, we make it sound so easy, don't we?
Well, you know what it is? It's about worrying about what other people think,
Yep.
or
And the
or that
fear.
or that you could make a mistake. Okay, let me just run one thing through. This is really interesting. Here in America, you go out and you start a business. Hopefully you research it somewhat and you get guidance and you make sure that you're not off track when you run with it. But and a lot of I'm telling you, every time it hit me, I didn't do all the research or anything. I just went right into it because I
Mm,
had such a strong bam. This is
mm,
what I got the guidance, and I've always known when it's like so hot. But feel that breath.
yeah.
Life should always feel like that. Like, wow,
Oh, it's so good. Thank you, Linda.
you're
So,
welcome.
Linda, dear, thank you so much. I think what I've really been, or what's really come up for me in this conversation is just the need to make the space and ask our spiritual team for direction. I don't see them as a place to go when we're desperate to ask for what should I do here? Can you help me? It's
Right.
not like a last minute prayer, but I
No,
really feel the need to connect and ask for direction and guidance in a general way. Follow through with the promptings. We've all got those little inklings. We've all got those little things that talk to us, and
right.
really just to eliminate that fear. So
Your knowingness.
the knowingness, now that's really nice. Yes. I think that's what I've really got out of our conversation today. Part of me looks back and I feel really, really sad that you've had such a hard start to life. And you said if you just got through childhood, but then I see how much you said you've grown and learnt and almost how that was just such a good thing. So I'm hanging on to your
It turned
thoughts.
out to be way past. I'm telling you, I didn't expect the successes in my life. I
Yeah.
really didn't. And it's been one after the other. This life is supposed to be fun,
Ah,
so much
yes.
fun. And we have to quit letting, you know, we have to quit becoming small, letting ourselves get small and get crushed by, the opinions of someone else or, oh, you can't do this. And here's what I was going to say earlier. This thing about taking a risk and failing. I could fail. That is so overblown. In this country, if you fail at your business, you've got an option. You can file bankruptcy.
Mm,
Do
mm,
you see me laugh at it? It was a law that was created to protect you from debt slavery.
mm,
So if you fail, don't go into it recklessly. Your intention is not to do that. But if it all goes against you, don't be afraid.
mm,
Don't be afraid. Just stop doing that to yourself.
mm,
You have
mm.
ways out. It used to be debtor prison. They threw you in prison and you died in prison because you couldn't pay your debts. That was like hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, not now.
We don't live in that world anymore.
Yeah.
Stop it. So I only want people to get their lives back. I want them to address their fears. You can't just say, don't be a fear. No, that's like saying, love yourself. Well, how can you love yourself when you probably don't even like yourself? You've got to
Mm,
start from the starting spot and start facing the fact you've got to admit, how many people I've asked, I'll ask a whole group of people, how many of you think you're living in fear? There'll be 100 people. Two will raise their hands. I go, well, uh, 98 of you are liars.
yeah. We've all got fear, haven't we?
Yeah. And the other two dared to be honest. Okay.
Yeah.
Dared to can look at that. That's what we have to do. We have to come
Mm,
out of the closet. We've got to quit. We've got to quit it. We've
mm,
got to admit the fear that we all have exposure to and take the journal and start writing out what that is. What is it that's got me
mm,
like that,
mm,
and
mm.
and get the shackles off your feet, your legs, and free yourself. And we've
Yeah.
been sold a bill of goods.
What do you mean by that?
We've been feared into our lives.
Yep, we have, and we all have fear. We all have our issues. We all have our things. Let's just
Yeah,
listen to our team and squeeze the juice out of life. I'm
that's
with
it.
you. Let's have some fun. Life is a big playground.
I love it. I love it. I
I
love it.
love it.
And the minute you find yourself on the other side, you've had a near death experience.
Yeah, yeah,
You look back at this and you go, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's no fear. Once you're there, there's no fear. It's love. It's
yeah.
amazing. This is where we come from. So how did this happen? It came from the people who were here before you got here that
Yeah.
had an agenda for you. I'm sorry to say this to all of you, but it's a strategy, a plan to keep you small.
There is a lot of fear in this world. It is a very real thing, but you're right, the other side, I don't remember any fear. There's so many good things to be had. There's a silver lining in everything. I know that's a bit of a cliche saying, but I do believe
True.
in everything there is something good that can come out of it. And I've seen that even in the last week through in our family, some very, very personal, hard stuff.
Yeah.
This morning we sat down and went, this silver lining would never have happened if that hadn't happened. And we've got to look for these things. We've got to make the most out of the life. So, Linda,
All through
dear, thank
all
you.
through You're welcome. All through my book, there was one tragedy after another that
Yeah,
happened in my life that every one of them woke me up a little bit
a little
more,
bit more.
like what you're talking about.
Exactly. And it's not easy. We are having a physical experience in a physical world. It's
Yeah.
not easy, but let's try and have some fun along the way. Let's try and really do it. Be very conscious about how we're living. So, Linda, dear, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for everything in our conversation.